The image shows an elongated skull with a strange metal implant embedded inside it. The skull found in Peru appears to be human, but the odd stretched out shape of the bulbous cranial bones could suggest otherwise. The implant itself is coarse and bumpy and is clearly not an organic part of the skeleton.
Captured on a mobile phone in China, the strange creature appears to be pulsating, with suckers clinging to the wall. Is this just an elaborate prank created with computer graphics or animatronics, or is it some strange hybrid of a spider or unknown creature?
Alien artifacts that have come from far out in space have somehow ended up on Earth.
They have led to scientists uncovering disturbing truths that definitively prove the existence of extraterrestrial life in space.
What are these figurines supposed to be? Would you ever think that they were meant to depict humans? Certainly don't look human to me, but it's not just because they're very old sculptures. I mean, they look intentionally not human. They look reptilian. The noses, or lack thereof, the eyes, if these were meant to resemble people, they did a bad job. Either that or these were really horrifying looking folks. But if they're not meant to be humans, then what exactly are they? The statues are often referred to as the Ubaid lizard men. The 7,000-year-old artifacts were uncovered in Iraq in the 20th century. There are theories as to what these things could be, but no definitive evidence. Unfortunately, we don't have any written records of the time, so determining the ideas behind people's artistic expression in prehistoric Mesopotamia, it's not really the easiest, but I'm pretty fascinated by the idea that there may have been some reptilian aliens visiting Earth around this time that people were depicting here.
Definitive proof of life beyond our planet found inside of a meteorite that landed in Sri Lanka back in December of 2013. Yeah. When pieces of the space rock were gathered and examined back in 2013, a shocking discovery was made. The debris of the meteor contained fossils, algae fossils, of clear extraterrestrial origin, according to lead scientist Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe. Because algae is technically alive, if Professor Chandra's science is correct, the discovery marks the first documented discovery of life that originated from outside of our atmosphere. While the legitimacy of the work has been debated amongst Chandra's peers, who claim that the algae may have been embedded into the meteorite during its time on Earth, the professor is standing firm in his discovery and has claimed that among the algae fossils he discovered were other organisms that are not yet identified and do not match anything discovered on Earth thus far, which of course is great news for those of us who are really hoping that Chandra's discovery of extraterrestrial life is legitimate and that the doubters are just mad they weren't able to make the discovery for themselves.
Are these sculptures of planes? They kind of look like stylized planes to me, but that would be impossible because these are thousands of years old. They're artifacts from what is known as the Kumbaya period, a pre-Columbian culture which was around from about 500 BC to 680. They were known for their skill in metalwork. I mean, obviously these things are lovely, but yeah, they really do look remarkably like modern airplanes. They have wings that don't really look like bird wings to me, and a lot of them even have what look like tail fins. So how and why were these created? Did these people somehow have knowledge of what the future of air travel was going to look like? Were they encountering beings with highly advanced technology? The official explanation is that these are depictions of animals, you know, insects, birds, that sort of thing, and yeah, there's a very good chance that's all these are, but I can't deny how eerily accurate they look to modern flying machines. And here's another really interesting thing. In 1994, a group of German engineers actually built scale models of the Kumbaya artifacts to see if they could fly, and guess what? They did, with an added propulsion system of course, but the designs worked. They were aerodynamically perfect and could fly.
The Williams Enigmalith. What is it? Well, I'm not entirely sure, but it's definitely from out of this world. It looks a bit like a rock with a plug, but it's not a rock with a plug, and it's far from being just an ordinary rock. The object was found in 1998 by a hiker named John J. Williams. He noticed a strange piece of metal coming out of the dirt on his hiking trail, and so he dug it up. When he did, he revealed a rock with 3 metal prongs sticking out of it. It looked somehow man-made and appeared appeared to have some kind of electrical component to it. Why? Well, I'm not sure, but Williams, who is an electrical engineer, claims that the electronic component embedded in the stone was not glued or welded into the granite rock surrounding it, meaning that while it appears to have possibly been man-made, because electrical components don't just naturally exist inside of rocks, especially ones dated to be around 100,000 years old, it must be something else, perhaps from somewhere else, perhaps somewhere out of this world. While Williams is open to having others research the strange rock, he does have a few conditions. He must be present for whatever discovery is made, and the rock must remain unharmed. Even with these parameters, you would think that by using modern day tools and technology, we would have been able to get an answer as to what exactly the rock is by now, and where the electrical component is coming from and how it was embedded. But no such discovery has been made, leaving the leading theory to be that its origins are likely not of this earth, and that it likely holds the answers to questions we haven't even thought to ask yet.
No one is exactly sure what this thing is. It's been dubbed the Wedge of Aiud and was found in Romania in 1973. Workers came across it while digging during a construction project. It was found buried along with two large mastodon bones. The wedge is around 5 pounds and it's made of aluminum. Now, this turns out to be pretty strange because aluminum wasn't widely used until the 19th century, but this thing is estimated to be much older, at least 250,000 years old. It's a very odd looking object. It looks like a modern art piece or something, but what exactly is it? Well, again, nobody really knows for sure, but one of the funnest theories, of course, is that it's extraterrestrial in origin, maybe having come off an ancient alien spacecraft or something.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Greek fire. Greek fire is essentially the primitive form of napalm, and it was first created in Greece. It was used often and efficiently for naval battles during the Byzantine Empire. It was used and worked well for these battles because it was able to not only float on top of the water, but it also was difficult to put out the fire using water as well. The secrets regarding this substance were guarded so greatly as it was such a powerful weapon at the time. The information on what it was made out of, how it was stored, or how it functioned remains a mystery to this day. The formula to recreate it has been tried many times, but it is currently thought that the particular storage and some sort of pressurized delivery system are what played such a huge role in its functionality and ignition, and we have yet to figure out those secrets. In our number 9 spot today, we have flexible glass. This is something that is actually sometimes debated on whether or not it actually existed at all, but there is some evidence and anecdotes that would suggest it absolutely did at one point. The story surrounding this lost creation depict a glassmaker who presents a glass vessel which holds various different things depending on where the story came from and who's telling it. The glass vessel was presented to the emperor, who inspected it before returning it to the glassmaker, who then threw it on the ground. The glassmaker then picks it up off of the ground and goes on to show the emperor that rather than broken pieces, the glass vessel just has a small dent in it, which he then proceeds to hammer back to the original shape, and thus the vessel now appears as if it had never taken any damage at all. It is said from here that rather than the emperor being excited about this new and useful creation, he began to worry that it would devalue things like the silver and gold already in circulation. This is said to have led to him ensuring that no one else knew the formula to create the flexible glass, and then subsequently beheading the poor glassmaker. This is what has ensured that if it ever were real, the flexible glass was a secret formula destined to stay in the past. In our number 8 spot today, we have Damascus steel. It's possible you may have heard of Damascus steel before, and that is because the name still exists, and it is used in reference to a variety of pattern welded forged steel products, but the modern day stuff just isn't what it used to be. Historically, Damascus steel was discovered quite a long time ago, and it was used to make swords in the Middle East. It is said that these swords had the ability to cut through rocks or even completely cut through other swords, which is just insane. The exact process of how these swords were made has been lost to time, but it is rumored that Wootz steel was imported from Sri Lanka and used in the creation process along with other metals. Somehow the metals were basically weaved together rather than an alloy being created. This is what led to the steel not only being exceptionally strong, but also flexible, and it is this process that modern day smiths cannot seem to exactly replicate. The modern day Damascus products are definitely high quality, gorgeous products, but it seems as though the secrets of the past may hold something even better. In our number 7 spot today we have silphium. This is less of a technology and more of something that was once naturally occurring and used for a multitude of things, but is now lost. Silphium is a lost genus of fennel plant that was used quite a bit during the Roman times. It was used as a form of birth control as well as a cure for many ailments. The plant is said to have been plentiful once along the coast of what is now Libya. Apparently this plant was something that was highly valued, and it even appeared on several forms of currency because it was so highly appreciated. It is speculated that this plant may have grown only in a small portion of the world, and it was simply just over-harvested until it was driven to extinction. It wasn't used by everyone when it was used, and this could be because it was probably quite expensive. So while this wasn't a man-made creation or technology, I feel like it definitely still applies to today's list as a plant, and its medical properties are something that just may be lost forever. In our number 6 spot today we have the pyramids. Alright, I'm just gonna ask, how the heck were the pyramids built? The more I learn about it, the more I'm convinced it must have been aliens, because it just seems so crazy and intricate and impossibly amazing. The pyramids of ancient Egypt may just appear to be amazing, incredible tombs that are something to be jealous of, but they really are so much more than that. Not only have they given researchers and historians incredible insight to what life in ancient Egypt was like, they have also opened the doors to some of the greatest mysteries. Firstly, there was the transportation of the massive stones that they used, some of which are believed to have come from nearly 500 miles away. Getting all of the materials from point A to point B is more than fascinating in itself, but there's more questions. There were not iron tools or chisels at the time, so how were they able to shape their stonework with such incredible precision? How were they able to finish the tops of the pyramids with the same precision despite their standing over 400 feet tall? And how were they able to build them in such a way that they've been able to withstand all of the elements for 4,500 years? You see what I mean at this point? It is clear that however they were able to build the pyramids in ancient Egypt, we just don't have that kind of technology or knowledge nowadays, because there is no way we'd be able to recreate these amazing structures in the same way as the original. Because people are gonna be like, we could create the pyramids. I'm like, I know we could now, Mr. Crane Operator, but imagine having to go up there all by yourself. No crane in sight. Just you and a big old rock. Good luck.
Coming in number 10, we have flexible glass. I mean, think of what we could do with a substance like that. You could make windows that never break. You could make a cup that never breaks. You make a bunch of other things that could never break. Basically, it would be an extremely durable version of everyday glass, and you could bet that would be a hot selling item. The first record of flexible glass happened between the years 14 and 37 AD. There was the great Emperor Tiberius, who would take exotic goods from all over the land. There was a glassmaker who came to him with something very unique. It was a beautiful vase. He handed it to the emperor, who dropped it by accident, but the vase didn't break. It dented. The glassmaker quickly repaired it in front of the emperor as a way to impress him, but it didn't work like that. The emperor saw this as a threat, for his empire had a ton of wealth in precious metals to make various items. This flexible glass could have hurt business, so to hide the secret of this glassmaker, he had him taken to the dungeon and killed. Not how this dude probably thought this was going to play out. And if you comb through history, there were a couple more times where this mysterious material pops up, but it never has made its way to this day and age. Who knows? Maybe someone will make this material and be able to keep their head on their shoulders. And guys, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps us out. Coming in number 9, we have the Hufunj Di Dong Yi. How do you know when an earthquake has happened? Well, you need a bunch of high-tech gear to tell you when it hit and how powerful it was. Well, that is actually dead wrong. There was a device in ancient China that was made by Zheng Hong. He was an incredible genius for his time and created a seismometer seismograph that was incredibly accurate. This thing was basically a big pot that would move with the shifting Earth. There was a pendulum inside it that could point you in the direction of where an earthquake had just hit, and this device had an incredible range. It could reach up to 100 miles away. The benefit of this was an emperor could find out what villages needed help because they were just hit by a natural disaster well before they sent an envoy to come receive help. How could you make something like that with just some pot and levers? I mean, if I was alive back then, I probably would have thought earthquakes happened because you didn't give enough grain to the river god. Coming in at number 8, we have a heat ray. I mean, we have all wanted ray guns since we were kids. When will we finally get some cool futuristic weapons that can blow our minds? Well, you might want to look into the past to find something like that. The ancient Greeks had a way to blast heat at enemy ships and set them ablaze. They would have massive bronze plates that would redirect the sun's rays back at enemy ships that were approaching through the water. This would focus it like a magnifying glass and burn these ships like a weird kid who's killing ants. So the ancient Greeks had a heat ray before we had a heat ray now? That is really starting to bother me right now. Coming in number 7, we have the pyramids. I mean, this one was a given. You can't make a list of amazing ancient relics without throwing the pyramids on that list, because we still don't know what happened. How did they build these big ass triangles? They are over 4,000 years old. They are 147 meters high. They have a ton of rooms and secret chambers and booby traps and detailed markings all over the walls. The Egyptians didn't have access to modern metals or even wheels. There's an estimated 2 million stones in a single pyramid. The stones weigh somewhere between 1.5 and 3 tons. How on earth did they do it? Some people say aliens, which I don't believe. I mean, it could have been some space dudes, but I would hope that they would give us something a little bit better than rock towers. I mean, give us a ray gun or something, that's what I want. But some people think that the Egyptians could have had access to some sort of tech that was far advanced for their time, but they either destroyed it because they didn't want anyone else to use it, or the tech was simply lost to time. Coming in at number 6, we have the unidentified disc. Have you ever tried to use a GPS other than Google Maps or Waze? They will take you all over the place and have you parked in some field that's 6 miles away from your destination. Maybe not that bad, but the Vikings had a device that put some of these apps to shame. The unidentified disc was a sundial type compass that could be used to navigate through the seas with an accuracy that was as good as a modern day compass. This explains how the Vikings were able to travel such great distances and always make it back to their homeland. But when you're making these long trips, eventually the sun will go down, and then everyone is going to be praying that you don't get thrown off course while the sun isn't up. But the Vikings found a way to get this bad boy to work even when there was no light. How do you get a sundial to work in the dark? Well, you have magic crystals. That's how the ancient texts describe them. Did these Vikings have help from the gods? Well, probably not. What these crystals could most likely do was project light onto this compass when there was only a very small light source. So with the moon and the stars, you would be able to navigate endured seas.
Tabby's star, officially known as KIC 8462852, is about 1,480 light years away in the constellation Cygnus. It was first discovered in 2009 and became rather famous for its bizarre light patterns. Observations from the Kepler Space Telescope showed that its brightness fluctuated in strange ways, with some dips as high as 22%. Now, unlike most stars, Tabby's light changes were erratic and unpredictable. At first, scientists thought a planet might be causing the dimming, but the dimming patterns were just too irregular to fit that theory, so this led to some pretty wild ideas. I mean, some think the star's light could be affected by an uneven distribution of dust, which isn't exciting in the slightest, but some scientists put forth the idea that the dimming might be caused by some sort of massive structure surrounding it, specifically a Dyson sphere, built by aliens, which opens and closes, possibly being used to harvest energy from the star. And that is a pretty fun idea. There have been a couple curious rectangular shapes spotted on Mars, and rumors and conspiracies started to spread online about these things possibly being of alien origin. Discovered by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, this rectangular object, possibly a boulder, was captured in stunning detail from about 180 miles above the surface. The high-rise camera used for the photos has a resolution of about 1 foot per pixel, allowing us to see stuff we might not expect from just a rock on Mars. Then there's the Phobos monolith, located on Mars's moon Phobos. The massive rock is about 295 feet tall. Amateur astronomer Efren Palermo first spotted it while doing an extensive analysis of Martian images. The size and shape of the thing definitely make it stand out. It casts quite the shadow, giving it an almost imposing presence. The monolith has even come up in fiction. In Alastair Reynolds' 2012 science fiction novel Blue Remembered Earth, the monolith is explained to have been carved by astronauts into the likeness of a wrecked spaceship. But, are these monoliths visitors from the far reaches of space like in 2001: A Space Odyssey, or are they just large rocks? In 2020, astronomers detected a mysterious repeating radio signal coming from the direction of Proxima Centauri, the closest star system to our own. Proxima Centauri is about 4.24 light years away and has at least one known planet, Proxima b, which sits in the star's habitable zone. The signal, which was detected by the Parkes Observatory in Australia, was pretty exciting. It was a narrowband radio signal, a type often released by artificial sources, so this meant, of course, that there was a possibility that whatever this thing was could have been a communication attempt from some sort of advanced civilization. The Listen Science team at Berkeley SETI Research Center spent months analyzing the signal, though, and ended up determining that it was likely caused by interference from human technology. Likely, though. That still leaves a small possibility that it was caused by something else. Did NASA capture an image of a doorway on Mars, or is this just a natural formation? The image was captured on May 7th, 2022 by the NASA Curiosity rover. It clearly looks like some sort of entrance to me. Even looks like there's a set of stairs beside it. But is this just a case of pareidolia? Well, unfortunately, I gotta say that's probably the case, but I mean, who knows? I'm not here to crush any dreams. I'm just here to present what I find and let y'all come to your own conclusions. And the same goes for this next one here. This is a cropped view of an image from the Mars Opportunity rover compared to a Neo-Assyrian attendant god statue from the British Museum. It's easy to see why people saw this rock and thought that it looked uncannily similar, because it looks uncannily similar. Did Martians visit Earth back in the day and return home with a souvenir? Were these sculptures actually inspired by stuff aliens brought to Earth and showed us humans? Both are fun ideas, but just like the mysterious doorway, are people's minds just playing tricks on them?
A top secret exchange program between the United States government and planet Serpo, located in the Zeta Reticuli star system, aka the planet of the short grays. The project was allegedly created under the administration of President John F. Kennedy after the US government saved the life of an alien, EVA 1, who crash landed on Earth back in 1947. Entirely grateful and forever indebted to humanity, the alien began working with the US government and teaching them about his home planet, Serpo. When EVA 1 died, he left behind communications technology, which the government then used to eventually get into contact with other Serpo natives. That is when the government made arrangements to send 12 specially trained astronauts to planet Serpo so that they may learn about life outside of our atmosphere. In order to reach Serpo, the 12 astronauts had to travel through a wormhole, after which the majority of them got sick and one unfortunately died of an aneurysm. But of course they kept going and eventually they reached the alien planet. For a decade they studied life on Serpo before returning home and assuming entirely new identities in order to protect the security of the mission. Fair enough, I suppose.
So what are the origins of this Project Serpo tale? Well, like with most conspiracies in the modern age, it started gaining popularity online and took off from there. It all started in 2005 when a series of anonymous emails began circulating among UFO researchers and enthusiasts. These emails, which were allegedly from a retired US government official who remained anonymous, laid out this insane story about an extraterrestrial exchange program. We'll talk more about this anonymous individual later. The Project Serpo story started making the rounds way faster than these types of stories would have back in the day. It was 2005, the internet was still relatively new, in the grand scheme of things anyway, and the UFO community was just hungry for new, sensational stories. And this one, it's pretty much the definition of sensational.
Remember that alien that I mentioned, EVA 1, that crash landed to Earth Earth in 1947? Yeah, well, that was actually the Roswell incident of 1947, and also the first time the US government supposedly made contact with aliens. As many of you are probably already aware, in 1947 an unidentified object crash-landed on some farmland in Roswell, New Mexico. When Area 51 was alerted of the incident, they rushed to the scene, collected the object, and released a statement saying that what had come spiraling down to Earth a few nights prior was nothing more than a weather balloon. But then they sent the object out to another base for testing, and another, and another. Why? Well, because it wasn't actually a weather balloon. It was an alien spacecraft containing 6 aliens, 5 of which had died in the crash, and one of which came to be known as Extraterrestrial Biological Entity Number 1, or EBA-1. EBA-1 was taken to the Air Force facility in Los Alamos, where he stayed until his death in 1952. During this time, he learned to communicate with the military and told them some pretty interesting things.
Now, if the US government is really working with these alien beings, where might they be carrying out their activities? Area 51? Some hidden base in Antarctica? Well, some say they could be operating from an even more top secret place. Dulce Base. Dulce Base supposedly sits deep beneath the Colorado-New Mexico border, close to Dulce, New Mexico. Dulce Base is said to be a secret facility where humans and aliens are working together, exchanging ideas and doing all sorts of experiments. Multiple levels deep underground with high-tech labs. The rumors are that different alien species, from the Greys, from planet Serpo possibly, to the reptilians, are working hand in hand with the US government. As to what they're trying to accomplish, probably something really fun and good that we don't really need to bother worrying about. Stories about this place really started coming about from a man named Paul Benowitz, who claimed to have discovered an underground base near Dulce full of gray aliens and humans. His claims caught a lot of attention, but Benowitz's mental health eventually declined and he ended up in a mental hospital, passed away in 2003. And there's always been this rumor that he was part of a big, widespread misinformation campaign.
As I said, during EBA-1's time on Earth, he informed the US government of quite a few things. One being that Serpo natives, Ebans as they are referred to by humans, had actually been visiting Earth for the last 2,000 years with no issue, but unfortunately, this time new Earth radar technology that they don't have on Serpo caused the ship to go haywire and crash, killing the majority of the crew. In 1949, a similar thing happened. 6 Ebans crash landed, but this time unfortunately none of them made it. When the ship was examined, the military found a communications device, which they worked on with EBA-1 to repair. They got it working and sent out multiple distress signals, but it wasn't until after EBA-1's death in 1952 that they finally got a reply. Communications began between the US military and the Ebans. It took a while, but eventually they were able to understand one another. After learning about the 12 deceased Ebans stranded on Earth, the Ebans asked if they could come to Earth and retrieve the bodies. Of course, the military wanted something in return, so they came up with the exchange program. The military wanted tech, but the Ebans said, no, you're not ready for our tech. And so they proposed something else. In exchange for the bodies of their deceased, 12 astronauts could spend a decade on planet Serpo. Furthermore, an Eban would stay on Earth to assist the military. In 1964, the Ebans landed on Earth once again to retrieve the bodies, and Project Serpo, aka Project Crystal Knight, as it has also been called, commenced.
In 1975, a pilot and several passengers flying a private plane near Pine Gap's airspace saw something they would never forget. The facility had only started operating 5 years before. Everyone was wondering what the hell was really going on in there, and the passengers and crew were hoping they were gonna see something while flying overhead, and see something they did. A large white object appeared, taking off from the base at an incredibly high speed. The object moved so fast that it was nearly impossible for the witnesses to get a good look at it before it vanished into the sky. The pilot, upon landing, reported the sighting. They were told to wait for investigators, and when these investigators arrived, they supposedly told the group to keep their mouths shut about what they'd seen and to forget the incident entirely. Obviously, not all of them did, and if there wasn't already heavy speculation and controversy about this facility amongst the Australian public before, there certainly was now. Now, what exactly is the Pine Gap facility? Sitting right in the middle of the outback, not too far from the remote town of Alice Springs, officially it's known as the Joint Defense Facility Pine Gap, and it's run by both the US and Australian governments. But what exactly goes on there? Like with any facility like this, there's the official answer and the more speculative ones. The facility is decked out with some serious tech. You know those big satellite dishes you see in movies? Pine Gap has plenty of them. They're used for all sorts of high-tech communication and surveillance activity. Officially, the facility is involved in intelligence gathering, satellite tracking, and missile detection. It's always been a controversial place though. It's seen a number of protests over the years, and many of them aren't even necessarily to do with the rumors and conspiracies, but they certainly don't help with its image. Pine Gap is rumored to be a secret site for advanced technology testing. Again, much like claims made about Area 51. A place where the military can try out their fancy new tech far away from the prying eyes of the public. And if you were gonna pick a spot for a test flight over your new advanced drone or aircraft, the Australian outback would be about as ideal as it gets. Ever seen Mad Max? Nothing out there but sand and kangaroos. I don't think there's actually any kangaroos in Mad Max, but you get my point. One of the main theories is that Pine Gap is involved in developing and testing advanced drones and aircraft. These drones could be used for anything from reconnaissance missions to lethal attacks. More on that next though. There are also rumors about Pine Gap being involved in cyber warfare testing, so developing new ways to protect against hacking or creating offensive strategies to mess with enemy computers. That's really the best way I can put it without doing a deep dive into exactly what hackers do on this kind of scale. I don't really know much about hacking other than the error messages I'd get that would screw up my janky old PC in the days of LimeWire. One of the biggest conspiracies is that Pine Gap is involved in operating spy satellites. I'd say a big part of this is the fact that it's jointly operated by the United States and Australia. It's partly run by the CIA, so that leads to some speculation for sure. It's rumored that Pine Gap plays a huge role in monitoring communications, radar, and other electronic signals from all over the world. The facility's remote location and the sophisticated tech make it a pretty ideal setup for controlling and receiving data from spy satellites orbiting Earth. There's a lot of speculation that Pine Gap works with various intelligence agencies to gather information on foreign military activity, enemy organizations, and just various global threats. I mean, this is barely even in the realm of conspiracy. It is a fact. It's involved in intelligence gathering, so I don't think spy satellites are really all that much of a stretch. It's really more of a question of, well, what exactly does this entail? Of course, they don't provide specifics because that would kind of defeat the purpose of the whole spying thing. Another one of the numerous conspiracy theories surrounding Pine Gap is its alleged role as an NSA or National Security Agency listening post. Edward Snowden famously brought this up, and it certainly makes the whole thing feel a lot more credible. According to the theory, Pine Gap is involved in surveillance and data collection, targeting domestic and international communications, using its advanced listening technology to intercept phone calls, your emails. Edward Snowden isn't the only guy to come out having said this though. There are other whistleblower testimonies alleging that Pine Gap collaborates closely with the NSA to gather intelligence. Their claim is that the facility's ideal location and the powerful antennas make for intercepting large amounts of data, which is then processed and analyzed by intelligence analysts. Another intense rumor about Pine Gap is that it's involved in coordinating lethal drone strikes. Pine Gap is believed to have the tech and connections to control and direct drones used in targeted killings. So we already know they have the technology to efficiently gather intelligence and track targets. So once a target is identified, the data is sent to operators who can launch and guide drones to hit specific targets, often in remote or hard to reach areas. These drones can carry out precision strikes, taking out high value targets with little to no risk to any human soldiers. The idea that Pine Gap could be involved in operations like this, again, stems from the fact that it's another hub for US intelligence and military agencies. So it's no secret that the US has used drones for targeted strikes in various parts of the world, and Pine Gap's advanced technology would be a major asset for this type of thing. Accusations about drone strikes have been denied, but I mean, of course, they're gonna deny something like that. Targeted drone strikes are probably the most controversial part of modern warfare. After one drone strike in July of 2013 in Pakistan, campaigners claimed the intelligence for the strike came from Pine Gap. There was a ton of outrage, and a number of human rights groups called for a UN inquiry into whether the Australian government could be seen as complicit in the strikes alongside the US military. There were even some allegations that Australian officials might have facilitated targeted killing, which would be against international law. Now, on to the stuff you've all been waiting for, of course, aliens and UFOs. Pine Gap has been a hotspot for conspiracy theories involving extraterrestrial research pretty much ever since it began operations. Some people are convinced that the facility is hiding evidence of alien life and is deeply involved in studying them and their technology. And this isn't just a situation of like, oh well, a big top secret government facility, gotta be aliens, right? No, there have been a lot of strange sightings in the area surrounding Pine Gap. Some people will even claim that Pine Gap is part of a global network of secret bases that collaborate on extraterrestrial research. Again, the American involvement certainly plays into this, so Pine Gap may be another facility like Area 51, according to the conspiracy anyway, where captured alien technology is reverse engineered. This could mean everything from developing new energy sources to building advanced propulsion systems similar to ones aliens could be using. There's also rumors that Pine Gap has underground facilities specifically designed for housing alien artifacts and possibly even extraterrestrial beings themselves. Let's get into some detail on a UFO sighting specifically, shall we? One of the most talked about encounters at Pine Gap happened early in the morning on December 22nd of 1989. So 3 men were heading home after an all-night hunting trip when something out of the ordinary caught their attention. It was around 4:30 a.m. when they noticed what looked like a door. But it was camouflaged to blend into its surroundings. Suddenly it opened right in front of them, and from behind it there was a huge metallic gray disc. The disc moved slightly, hovering over the base for a few moments. The hunters stood there, frozen in shock, and watched as this disc shot upwards and then vanished into the sky. As they tried to process what they'd just seen, they saw the camouflage door slowly move back into place, sealing shut as if it had never been there. Pine Gap employs around 1,000 people, and most of them live in the nearby town of Alice Springs. The workers are a mix of Australian and US intelligence personnel, but Alice Springs has a large American population, thanks to Pine Gap obviously, and visitors and townsfolk will often say, if you ask any of these Americans about their jobs, the common answer you'll get is that they're gardeners. It's apparently so common that it's become kind of an inside joke. Are all these people who say they're gardeners really gardeners, or could gardener be a cover for the real work these individuals do at the facility? Some people think that these so-called gardeners are involved in secretive operations at Pine Gap. Gardening, it's a pretty low-key profession, makes for a pretty convenient front for intelligence personnel and want to avoid drawing attention. At least that's what I'd say if everyone else hadn't picked that front too. I mean, you know, baker, carpenter, plenty of jobs to pick from, guys. Weather control. No, Pine Gap isn't even safe from accusations of weather control. This theory is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. The idea is that the facility has the capability to manipulate weather patterns using advanced technology to create or alter it. And maybe they have help from some of that alien technology they're reverse engineering. Again, even without the possible secret alien technology hidden inside, people see the sophisticated equipment combined with the secretive nature of the facility, and questions start to form in people's heads like, could they be playing God and screwing with the weather? Could they be using methods like cloud seeding or even more advanced techniques, creating rain in drought-stricken areas? That would be nice. Or maybe they're working on ways to weaponize the weather. The concept of weather control isn't entirely far-fetched either. Various governments have been known to have explored weather modification in the past. The star system where these aliens are supposedly from has been at the center of some of the most famous alien abduction stories in history, including the Barney and Betty Hill abduction. Were these beings from Serpo? Ebens, or Greys as they're typically called, responsible for abductions like this? The Barney and Betty Hill case is pretty interesting. In September of 1961, this American couple was driving through rural New Hampshire at night when they noticed strange lights in the sky that seemed to be tracking their car's movements. Barney decided to stop the car to get out and have a look, and what he allegedly saw were humanoid figures peering out from a hovering craft. The Hills peeled off as fast as they could, but they later realized they'd lost a pretty hefty chunk of time that they just didn't remember. But as the days passed, they started to remember things. They ended up reporting being taken aboard a UFO where they were subjected to medical examinations by beings described as small, with gray skin, oversized eyes, and tiny little anime mouths, that's the exact way they described it back then. It's a 60s term, anime mouths. Their account was one of the earliest descriptions of the now iconic image of your classic gray alien.
Of course, a regular mission to space is no walk in the park, but a mission to a faraway planet located in a star system entirely separate from our own, that's tough. And apparently so was the training process. It took an entire year of survival, escape, evasions, weapons, and psychological training for the 12 astronauts to become fully prepared for their mission. The crew consisted of scientists, linguists, pilots, 2 doctors, and a security officer. Over the course of a year, along with the standard training, one by one, each member of the crew was buried in a 6 by 5 foot box and kept there for 5 days as part of a training intensive. There was no light, no communication. Just a small air hole that allowed the astronauts to receive food and water and not suffocate to death. It was tough, but they all passed, and the pilots even went on to learn how to operate alien spacecrafts. When it came time to take off, the 12 astronauts, along with 40 tons of gear, which included 10 motorcycles and 3 jeeps, were loaded into the spacecraft using anti-gravity technology, and one Eben came along to assist in their journey. When the ship was all boarded, each astronaut went to their own individual pod and settled in for the long journey ahead.
Alright, before we get to, what they saw on that journey, let's have a little bit of fun here and talk about something that comes up more than you'd probably think when Project Serpo or just interactions between aliens and humans is discussed. Hybrids. Yeah, aliens creating human-alien hybrids, either through experimentation or, God forbid, actually getting it on. This kind of thing always feels like it's going down the same rabbit hole that creepy online fan fiction does, where it's like, I'm gonna write about my fantasy of Alf impregnating Willie Tanner. I don't know. I'm not trying to shame, live your lives, but the concept of humans and aliens breeding with each other always feels inherently silly to me. With that said though, this does often play into the Project Serpo conspiracy. Those astronauts were apparently on this planet for a while. Who knows who they met? One thing could have led to another. Plus, in all these reported UFO abduction cases, who knows what kind of nasty experiments those Greys could have been doing.
When the crew arrived at Serpo, the first thing they noticed was that it was barren, bright, and hot. Really hot. About 107 degrees Fahrenheit or 41 degrees Celsius. Quickly, they realized why. Planet Serpo had 2 suns, which are shown here in a photograph taken by one of the astronauts, allegedly. One of the suns was orbited by Serpo, and the other was off in the distance. Because of this, the planet never got dark, and the days were 40 hours long, meaning that their decade-long mission was actually going to take 13 human years. In total, there are about 650,000 Ebens living on the planet in small, separate village communities and houses made of some kind of concrete rubber substance. It was a primitive life, but at the same time, the Ebens were equipped with electricity and incredibly advanced technology. Families generally consisted of a male and female Eben, and each family was allowed to have a maximum of 2 children, which were hidden away until they reached the age of maturity. During their time on Serpo, the astronauts gathered as much information about the Ebens as they could. And if you guys remember, I do believe I mentioned that one of the astronauts died on transit. Apparently the Ebens used that astronaut to clone and create hybrids of, like James mentioned. And it was then that the remaining astronauts realized that they weren't as peaceful as they once thought them to be. When it came time to return home, for some reason, 2 of the astronauts actually decided to stay, and then 2 more astronauts died on the way back to Earth. The surviving astronauts were given a large sum of money and an entirely new identity. That's great and all, but many of them were suffering from radiation poisoning due to the 2 suns and died soon after their return to Earth.
One of the most avid supporters of the Project Serpo conspiracy is a man named Richard Doty. Doughty, who we can't really talk about Serpo without talking about this guy. See, Richard Doughty has made some pretty outlandish claims, so outlandish that there's a whole other conspiracy that spawned around him and other government officials like him. Supposedly, Doughty was the man behind those anonymous emails I talked about earlier. Richard Doughty is a retired special agent who used to work for AFOSI, the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation. But a lot of people think he wasn't actually investigating UFOs, but that he was part of a team spreading misinformation intentionally, basically muddying the waters and leaking supposedly secret info about the government's exchange program with alien beings in order to confuse the public, making it hard for us to tell what's real or not. Of course, the purpose behind the misinformation is, of course, to distract everyone from the actual nefarious things the government is up to. I mean, who doesn't get excited about aliens, right? I'm sure we'd all rather believe that the worst thing the government is doing is working with extraterrestrials instead of them doing some shady stuff at our own expense. Could there be some genuine truth about the planet Serpo thing? I mean, sure, maybe, but you know, just something to keep in mind with stuff like this. The Black Knight satellite is an object that some believe is orbiting Earth, and that it's possibly an alien device of some kind. In 1899, Nikola Tesla detected mysterious signals while experimenting with his radio technology in Colorado. He thought the signals originated from the atmosphere, but soon realized they were actually coming from space. A few years later, an Italian inventor, electrical engineer, and physicist picked up similar signals, and Norwegian engineer Jørgen Hals noticed unusual radio echoes that took longer than expected to return. These echoes, known as long-delayed echoes, or LDE, are still unexplained. In 1973, a Scottish researcher by the name of Duncan Lunan claimed to decode messages coming from a mysterious satellite, saying it sent a star map directing us to the Epsilon Bootis star system. Then there's the STS-88 mission in 1998, where astronauts photographed what some believe is the Black Knight satellite. NASA, however, dismissed it as a loose thermal blanket. UFOologist Jax Valley has dug into supposed evidence of the satellite for decades, though, only to have his findings mysteriously confiscated. Some theorize that the Black Knight, if it really is hovering around up there, might be a time capsule from a lost, ancient, advanced civilization meant to preserve knowledge or technology, or that it's an ancient piece of alien technology that's been watching us for who knows how long. So, alright, I'm cheating with this one, but how about an artifact we've sent out into space in the hopes that it will be found by extraterrestrial life? And no, I'm not talking about sending out radio signals. I'm talking about actual physical objects called the Pioneer plaques. These are gold aluminum plaques that were attached to the Pioneer 10 and Pioneer 11 spacecraft launched in 1972 and 1973, respectively. They feature pictorial messages that include nude figures of a human male and female, along with symbols meant to share information about the spacecraft's origin and its creators. No better way to do that than just show them a nude image of you. The plaques were strategically placed to make sure they would be shielded from damage by space dust over time. The idea for the plaques came about when journalist Eric Burgess visited NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, spoke with Carl Sagan, who'd been advocating for communication with extraterrestrial intelligence. Sagan embraced the idea, and NASA approved it, giving him just 3 weeks to create a message. Working with astrophysicist Frank Drake, Sagan designed the plaque, and the artwork was crafted by his wife, Linda Salzman Sagan, with additional contributions from artist John Lomberg. Pioneer 10 was launched on March 2nd, 1972, followed by Pioneer 11 on April 5th, 1973. We haven't received a response yet, but hopefully if we do, it's a nice one. The WOW signal is one of the most famous and mysterious radio signals ever detected. It's still talked about to this day, even though it was first spotted way back in 1977 and has never been heard again. While working at Ohio State University's Big Ear Radio Telescope, astronomer Jerry R. Amon noticed an unusual strong signal while monitoring for extraterrestrial communications. The signal lasted for 72 seconds and appeared to come from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. What made made the signal so odd was, for one, it was around 30 times stronger than your typical background radio waves. Some started to think that the signal could have been a form of communication from an advanced civilization trying to reach out to us. Whatever it was, it stood out so much that Eamon circled the readout and wrote "Wow" on the printout, giving it its name. There have been tons of attempts to detect it again, but it's only ever shown up that one time. Some researchers have speculated that it might have originated from a comet passing by Earth. Others still cling on to the alien hypothesis, though till this day we still don't know for sure. In 2017, astronomers spotted an unusual object zipping through our solar system, naming it Oumuamua, which loosely translates to scout in Hawaiian. Now, what was cool about this thing was that it's the first known interstellar object to pass by Earth. Oumuamua is unlike any asteroid or comet we've ever seen. We don't even know if it is one. It was about 1,300 feet long and shaped like a cigar. Its speed was also remarkable, traveling at around 196,000 miles per hour, which was too fast for it to be captured by the sun's gravity. And the thing's brightness fluctuated as it moved. Scientists expected it to behave like a comet, showing a tail of gas and dust, but there was nothing of the sort. So what exactly was this thing? Well, some researchers were actually saying that it could have been a piece of alien technology due to its weird acceleration and shape. Others said it was probably just a piece of rock, a fragment of a larger object ejected from its home system. But sticking with Oumuamua though, one physicist had some very interesting ideas about it. Avi Loeb is a Harvard professor and astrophysicist who believes Oumuamua isn't just your typical space rock, but might actually have been a piece of alien technology. He looked at its odd behavior, the fact that it seemed to be moving in a way we'd never seen before. Loeb proposed that Oumuamua could have been a light sail, a type of spacecraft that propels itself using the pressure of sunlight or starlight on its surface. This concept isn't just science fiction either. Researchers here on Earth are already looking into light sails as a way to explore space. If an advanced alien civilization existed, it's possible they could have built technology like this already. What's abundantly clear though, not just about Oumuamua, but about space in general, is that there are endless mysteries just waiting to be solved. Let's just hope we like what we find in the years to come.
Coming in at number 5, we have the boomerang. Alright guys, now it's time to head down under for one of the oldest, most advanced hunting tools that we have ever seen. Sure, we have things that can kill things more effectively now than a boomerang does, but we have to appreciate how precise and deadly these things were, and how you can find some ancient relics of boomerangs that seem to be better built than the ones we have today. And in case you didn't know, boomerangs are basically a wing. Someone invented something that could fly around 2,300 years ago. Well, that is the oldest boomerang ever found, so the first one could have been even older than that. Before people had shoes, someone made something that could not only fly and kill something, but it would also return to them. I don't know who that guy was, but whoever he was an absolute legend. That guy for sure chucked that thing for the first time, and the whole tribe was like, dude, you are going to be king forever because that is the coolest thing that I have ever seen in my life. I literally don't know how the sun works, and you just made a flying stick that comes back to you like a dog fetching a ball. This is amazing. Coming in at number 4, we have Greek fire. This is one of the biggest mysteries of ancient Greek warfare. See, the Greeks had a weapon like none other. It was fired out of a long metallic tube that was attached to boats. It was some sort of napalm-like substance that they would fire out of these tubes, and it would lace enemy ships in a flaming substance that couldn't be put out by simply pouring water on it. It must have looked like a dragon breathing fire on you. The secret as to how they were able to make such a weapon never leaked out into the wrong hands. So to this day, we still have no idea how they were able to do it. Maybe some future dudes came back in time and was like, hey, you guys want to see something that's really gonna blow your mind? Well, let me show you this wild thing right here real quick. If you were an enemy getting blasted by this stuff, you would have for sure thought it was magic. Coming in at number 3, we have ancient Chinese wells. You know how we're burning through a ton of fossil fuels right now, and after saying that, I literally understand why they call them fossil fuels, because it's fuel that comes from fossils. God, I am dumb sometimes. Well, we all know that there are much cleaner forms of energy that we should probably be using because the world seems like it's gonna die if we don't change change up our tactics. Well, in ancient China, they had tapped into wells that were full of natural gas. They dug wells deep into the ground, and this was originally so they could harvest salt inland, because it was very hard to get salt without going down to the ocean unless you dug these massive wells. But with this, they found shots of methane. They then built bamboo tubes that led to people's homes so they could use the natural gas to heat their houses. That's pretty cool if you ask me, but now that I'm thinking about it, methane isn't the cleanest energy, but it's still amazing tech to have a natural gas chute that goes directly to your home. Coming in number 2, we have the Ulfberth sword. There was a tomb found in Scandinavia that had some amazing swords in it. There were over 100 swords discovered, and there was something that set these bladed weapons apart from all the others from the era. They were much more advanced than any other swords that were made from nations around that time. These blades were made out of 99.9% pure metal. I mean, if you were to look into most metal objects today, I'm sure they would be skimping somewhere. The metal pieces in your car probably have little bits of plastic in them to help cut cost. What was so impressive about these weapons is that the surrounding areas would not get this kind of technology until 800 years later. Between the compass that you could use in the dark when you were out on the ocean and the swords that were 800 years ahead of their time, it's no wonder that the Vikings were able to be such a force of destruction. And coming at the number 1 spot, we have Mithridatium. That sounds like something that would be pulled out of a Tolkien book, but it's actually one of the most mysterious substances made by King Mithridates IV of Pontius. This guy was living during Emperor Nero's reign around 60 BC. The king had developed a substance called Mithridatium, which was apparently an antidote to all poisons. Sounds like a pretty handy tool, especially if you're a king or emperor. We all know that people are trying to poison them at all hours of the day. Now, the recipe for this substance was never let out to the public. Only the king and Emperor Nero himself knew how to make it, and maybe they should have told a few more people, because eventually the formula was lost, and since then, no one has been able to recreate this elixir. But maybe it was all a lie. Nero could have spread rumors that he had such a tool so people wouldn't be so bold to poison him. I mean, that would be a pretty smart move.
In our number 5 spot today, we have the Sloot coding system. Okay, this one isn't exactly ancient, but I still had to talk about it today because I had never even heard of this at all before. Jan Sloot was a Dutch electronics engineer, and in the mid to late 90s, he created a data storage method that could hold an entire full-length movie in just 8 kilobytes of data. Considering most modern technologies still require much more data to store a full-length movie, this kind of technology was extremely impressive for the times. Investors of course quickly began to flock to Jan. When he presented his data storage system to a man named Roll Piper from Philips, Roll ended up later leaving Philips in order to join Jan's company. Just days before the code and system was due to be released, Jan ended up being found dead in his garden from what seemed to be a heart attack. This is of course extremely tragic and sad, but you might be sitting there thinking the same thing that I was. His death probably didn't stop people from still seeking the answers that had yet to be released on how this storage system was created. Well, as it turns out, people of course did look, but a key piece of information regarding it all was on a floppy disk that was in Jan's possession. Since his death, no one has ever been able to find this floppy disk that is said to hold these secrets. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism is an extremely mysterious discovery that has stumped researchers ever since it was found. This artifact was found 150 feet below the surface of the Aegean Sea in a shipwreck and is the oldest kind of computer ever recorded, as it was dated back to the 7th century BCE. The author David Childress likened the finding to if they had found a jet plane in King Tut's tomb. That's how bizarre this discovery really was. Due to the complexity and oddity of the finding, alien enthusiasts have believed for quite some time that it may have been technology that was passed down from some sort of superior being. This first analog computer may have had a ton of uses, and researchers aren't 100% sure about all the ways it was used, but it is known to have been some sort of astronomical calculator. It was able to predict eclipses and different planetary placements. The mechanism was able to calculate the position and running time of each planet. How would they have been able to create this without the use of sophisticated astronomical tools? We have been able to recreate the mechanism to see how it functions, but no one is able to tell how it could have possibly been created. In our number 3 spot today we have Mithridate. Mithridate was named after King Mithridate VI, who was the king of Pontus. It is said that he was so terribly afraid of being poisoned that he, over the course of 7 years, adapted his body to different poisons. It is also said that after mixing 45 ingredients together he was able to create Mithridate, which is said to have been a universal antidote to all poisons. The exact formula has of course been lost to time, but historians have said that it is believed that the antidote contained opium, chopped vipers, and small amounts of both the poisons and their antidotes. Imagine, just opium, just throw it in there, why not? The antidote was originally created around 100 BCE and it was actually used by many people for centuries, and even apparently as recently as the 19th century. It is unclear how the recipe entirely disappeared, but despite some of the best efforts, no one has been able to recreate it since the last known use. In our number 2 spot today we have Stradivari violins. If you're a string instrument enthusiast, then you definitely have heard of the Stradivari family and the instruments created by them. These instruments were created by 1650 and 1750 and were highly sought after in their day, and even more so now. Apparently these instruments featured an unparalleled sound quality that has been found to be impossible to recreate. The instruments that have survived through to modern day are now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, so it is abundantly clear that these instruments are incredibly valuable. Here's the catch though. Experts can't agree or figure out what exactly it is that makes them sound so wonderful. Some have speculated that the magnificent sound comes from a fungus that grew in the region, and some think that it is the density of the wood, but regardless, no one really knows for sure. At the end of the day, the secrets of the family art were laid to rest with the Stradivari family. In our number 1 spot today we have Roman cement. Concrete is the most commonly used building material in the world, but our current cement, water, sand, rocks mixture is nothing compared to the original stuff. While our modern concrete was created in the 1700s, there was obviously stuff that was being used before. In fact, concrete was used quite a bit during the antiquity by Egyptians, Assyrians, and Romans. The Romans seemingly used it the most, and they are the ones who really perfected the recipe that we just can't seem to replicate now. Apparently the ancient mixture involved burnt limestone as well as crushed rocks and water, but whatever the heck it was, their structures were a lot more withstanding than ours are now, which has led people to question, how do we get that level of hardiness back in our modern day concrete? And to that I say, like most other things, I do not know. Perhaps this is just another mystery lost to time.
The Sumerian Triumph Tapestry, which appears to not only depict the succession of various rulers to the throne, but also the presence of UFOs hovering above the Sumerian people, is next on our list today. The tapestry was created in the capital of West Flanders province in the Flemish region of Belgium around 1538, and since then it has been the subject of many conspiracy theories, which makes sense considering the 2 alien spaceship looking objects depicted in the top left corner of the piece. Now, if you know anything about the Sumerian people or the Anunnaki, you are likely well aware that even without the presence of the Triumph Tapestry, the Sumerians are a pretty good argument for the legitimacy of aliens having had a pretty prominent presence on Earth in the past. Adding the tapestry into the mix is really just the cherry on top of the extraterrestrial cake, because it confirms how the Anunnaki, the ultra-intelligent alien species that ordered the creation of the pyramids, arrived on Earth in the first place. If you don't know anything about the Sumerians, ancient Sumeria, and the Anunnaki, but would like to, I do have a video on them titled Ancient Sumerian Mysteries that may never be explained that you can watch after this.
Next we have the Casso artifact, known as one of the world's out-of-place artifacts. It was discovered in 1961 near Olancha, California. While out looking for geodes, these rock collectors found a strange rock that seemed out of place, and when they cut it open, they were surprised to find it actually had a metal core inside. The outer layer of the rock was encrusted with a hard substance, while the inner metal core was a cylindrical object that looked almost like a spark plug. This was not what anyone had been expecting to find because the rock seemed to be millions of years old, far older than the age of modern machinery. So it sparked, see what I did there? It sparked a lot of curiosity. Some researchers think this is just a naturally occurring geode that somehow formed around a modern spark plug, but what if it's not the case? What if it's a piece of ancient technology left by an advanced civilization? Or even more interesting, an object that some extraterrestrial beings left behind a long time ago.
I'm sure by now we've all heard the theories that the pyramids were built by aliens, which is a fair assumption considering the fact that historians have been consistently unable to come up with an explanation as to how the construction of the pyramids would have been possible in ancient times. But what about other massive artifacts like Stonehenge, or perhaps the massive stone head that was found in the middle of the Guatemalan jungle in the 1930s? The statue dates back to before the Spanish Revolution, so prior to the Mayan and Aztec empires falling to the Spanish armies, which is strange considering 1, there is little to no way the Mayans living in the area could have sculpted the stone head and placed it in the area, and 2, if somehow they did, why doesn't it look like them? The statue's features do not mimic those of the ancient Mayans or Aztecs. Because of this, it is believed that the features once displayed on the head, which have since worn down due to revolutionary troops using the historic artifact as target practice, were actually the features of an ancient alien civilization that was far more intelligent than humanity, and that likely had a hand in the construction of the Mayan and perhaps even the Aztec empires as well.
This next one is actually 100% known to be from space. Back in June of last year, Harvard professor and theoretical astrophysicist Avi Loeb led an excavation to Papua New Guinea to uncover the remnants of a meteor that had crashed into the Pacific Ocean, and what they found were small spherical space rocks from deep in space, and there's still a question as to whether the object they came from was naturally occurring or not. What they do know is that the small spheres are made up of elements we don't have here on Earth. Loeb wrote, quote, "This is a historic discovery because it represents the first time that humans put their hands on materials from a large object that arrived to Earth from outside the solar system."
Finally, we have an incredibly mysterious extraterrestrial object discovered by the Betts family in 1974. That year, a mysterious fire had broken out on the family's property that destroyed 88 acres of woodland. When the Bettses went out to explore the area and search for the cause of the mysterious fire, they stumbled across a metal sphere with a diameter of just 8 inches and a weight of almost 20 pounds. At first, the family thought that the object might have belonged to the Soviet Union or perhaps NASA. They thought about leaving it where they found it, but curiosity got the better of them, and so they decided to take it home. About 2 weeks later, the family's son was playing guitar while sitting next to the strange spherical object when all of a sudden it began to emit a strange resonating sound that caused the family dog to act up. A while later, the family discovered that when they pushed the sphere across the floor away from themselves, it would change direction and return to the person who had pushed it. Not only that, but the object avoided being damaged at all costs, rolling up slanted tables to keep itself from crashing on the floor, and eventually it began emitting pulsing sounds seemingly out of nowhere. The strange behavior was witnessed by scientists as well as representatives from the military, so you don't just have to take the Betts family's word for it. At first, the Betts family refused to let the ball out of their possession, but after doors started slamming shut and music began randomly playing in their home, they handed it over to the authorities, who were shocked to discover that the metal ball was just that, a metal ball, or so it appeared. While there is no solid explanation as to why the sphere displayed such strange properties and caused so many strange things to happen, I think we can all agree that the most likely reason is because it came from outer space with a purpose that has yet to reveal itself to mankind. There you have it, folks.
We hope to catch you in the next video.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. It's about strange anomalies that were found in the Amazon rainforest. We have delved deep into the mysteries of the jungle to see what we could find, and the answers might shock you. What are you waiting for? Click the video now to find out more.